The floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the debate on this. As I said yesterday, I'm sure everybody has very strong opinions about this, and I think a lot of people's opinions have probably evolved as they've served in the legislature over how many years you've served. I just want to clean up a couple points, and then I'll tell another story. First of all, I didn't realize my polling assertion was going to get so many questions. But first of all, I went and looked up the Wasson poll question. The Wasson poll question, which came out yesterday, question number 10, asked to random sample Virginians, would you support or oppose a proposal to repeal the death penalty in the state of Virginia and replace it with a life sentence without parole? 56% support, 44% oppose. Question that was asked. Gallup poll. Gallup, they asked, are you in favor of the death penalty for a person convicted of murder? 55% yes, 43% no. But they also asked a separate Gallup poll where they asked people whether the death sentence was better than life in prison, and I think it was 60% of people surveyed said they supported life in prison over the death penalty. That was what the polling data reflected. I would also just note, by the way, that 55% of Virginians also support the repeal of mandatory minimum sentences in the same poll. Second thing, there's no question that the application, that the actual imposition of the death penalty has been rare in the last 10 years, but the incidence of our Commonwealth attorneys using it to prosecute and or leverage folks has not been rare. The data the Sentencing Commission gave me yesterday said that between FY15 and FY20, 61 people were charged with capital murder in Virginia. Out of the 61, 48 of them received life sentences, life without parole, and 13 of them got a term of years. And I can't tell you, based on the data I got, whether that was pursuant to a jury decision or a judge or a combination of the two or a plea or a trial, but that's the reality. So even though a lot of people aren't getting the death penalty, it is being used, leveraged, and attempted to be applied in order to either gain pleas or taken to trial. So it's still being used plenty, which is why our Capital Defender Service is really busy. So I don't think that it's quite that rare in terms of being attempted to be used. Third thing, I'm really impressed with a lot of people here have the senator from Northern Fairfax, or Western, Senator Howell. She stole my thunder on victims. The junior senator from Richmond stole some of my arguments on Earl Washington. Senator McClellan tapped Jerry Givens for me. The senator from Western Fairfax tapped some stuff I was going to say. Just, if you got a minute, go Google Daniel Williams, Joseph Dick, Eric Wilson, and Derek Tice, the Norfolk Four. They were charged with capital murder. We ended up paying about $10 million of taxpayer dollars because of that. And I believe some of them, if not all of them, confessed. And they ended up pleading guilty to avoid a capital murder trial. And none of them did it. They were all exonerated by DNA. It was a crooked detective, literally a crooked detective, that forced them to plead guilty. There's lots of names to look at. And in all the talk and opposition, I still have not heard anybody explain how it is moral to convict innocent people. The junior senator from Richmond was very eloquent in his speech, but I've not heard a single person explain how it is moral for our society to justify executing innocent people in order to have a system that provides some semblance of justice for some victims, but not all of them. I'm still waiting to hear what that argument is. Mr. President, the last thing I'd say is, one of the moments that I sort of achieved clarity on this issue was when I was about 21 years old. And I was at JMU, it was my senior year. President Carrier somehow got word to me. We didn't have email or text messages back then. I was told to go see President Carrier. He asked me to come see him, and he said, Surovell, I want you to apply to be a governor's fellow. I didn't know what that was, but I ended up applying for it. Came down here to Richmond for 2 months, and while we were here, we took all these field trips. And they took us to Falls Cape State Park. They took us to the ABC Warehouse. We went to the Supreme Court. We had this brand new museum of frontier culture. It was brand new back then. We took a field trip out there. And, you know, as they were showing us all the assets of our state, one of the things they decided it was important for us to go see was the brand new Greenville State Penitentiary. Because they thought it was important to give, you know, some of, I guess, young leaders or young graduates from our Virginia colleges a tour of the death chamber. They gave the men one set of instructions. They told us to wear tennis shoes because the shoes that I'm wearing right now don't work very well in a prison when you're walking around on metal grates. They told all the women, don't wear a dress because you can look right up through the floor. And we walked around. They gave us a tour of the geriatric ward. They wouldn't dare take us where there were any younger prisoners. They took us a tour of the geriatric ward where all these old men were not doing a whole lot. And then they took us down the hall. And that was the first time I met Jerry Gibbons. And he walked us around, took us in the control booth. He showed us the machine where you push the buttons and explain. They all go in there, and a bunch of them get in there, and they don't know which button's going to do it, and they all hit the button. And then they took us out into the room, and there it stood was this wooden chair, because this is before lethal injection. And I didn't want to get anywhere near that thing. Some of the young idiots with me decided they wanted to sit in it. I didn't want to get anywhere near that thing. I just sat there and looked at it, and all I could think of was, you know, how many people have sat in that thing while the Commonwealth of Virginia, you know, cooked the life out of them. If you want to read some interesting stuff, go read about the electric chair. I put in a bill in to ban it back in 2014. And, you know, looking back on all that, I just sit there and wonder, like, how in the world could the people who put together that field trip program think that, you know, this is something we need to show our governor's fellows? You know, why is this something we're proud of? We got to go show them the electric chair. To me, it's twisted. And God, I hope they're still not taking the governor's fellows and showing them the lethal injection table. Mr. President, I think at the end of the day, if we look back 50 years from now, the electric chair, that lethal injection table, they're going to be sitting in a museum. They're going to be sitting next to the stocks from Jamestown and Williamsburg. They're going to be sitting next to the slave auctioneer block that they're taking off the streets in Fredericksburg just recently. This thing's going to be a museum piece, and people are going to look back and wonder how it was we ever used these things. Mr. President, it's time to move on. I hope you support the bill.